Welcome, my friends. Today we will be discussing angiitis of the central nervous system, or cerebral vasculitis. As always, I do encourage you to review the vasculitis introduction lecture, as this is a prerequisite for this talk. There are advertisements attached to my lectures. This is done without my knowledge or consent. I do not necessarily endorse the products which are being advertised, and I'm not reimbursed for those. Again, I do appreciate you listening. I encourage you to listen to all of the talks about vasculitis and rheumatology in general. Thank you for coming. I'd next like to discuss the primary angiitis of the central nervous system. Again, if you've not seen the introduction talk, vasculitis or arteritis is inflammation of the blood vessel wall. This can lead to disease due to inflammation and necrosis of the blood vessel wall with extravasation of the blood or impairment of blood flow to the distal tissue with ischemia or infarction of the tissues. Classification schema from the Chapel Hill conference is based on vessel size and the presence or the absence of the anti-neutrophil cytoplasmic antibody. Today I'm going to be talking about primary central nervous system vasculitis, which, as you see, doesn't fit within the classification schema. It's classified as a single organ vasculitis. We last talked about cutaneous leukocytoclastic angiitis, which is classified as a single organ vasculitis. So by definition, central nervous system vasculitis is defined as angiitis of the leptomeningeal and parenchymal arteries of the brain, and rarely the spinal cord. And it is felt to be a small and a medium-sized vessel vasculitis. Presentation. Number one, I just want to note that it's a long indolent process, but they can present with subacute and chronic headaches. Sometimes there can be cognitive impairment, trouble thinking, or strokes, or they can have transient ischemia attacks. There can sometimes be cranial or peripheral neuropathies. They can have ataxia, seizures, or coma. And there can sometimes be spinal cord involvement with myopathy and motor weakness, such as one sees in a paraplegia. Again, this is a long, slow process, and the average time to diagnosis is about 170 days. Now, the differential is huge, and the clinician must remember that when primary central nervous system angiitis is considered, that the correct diagnosis is probably something else, and that's a quote of Dr. Haj Ali. And so it's a very long differential, not to belabor it, but again, looking for evidence of infection of things that can involve the central nervous system, either bacterial, viral, or fungal. And parasites are also included in that list of things. This could be part of a systemic vasculitis as opposed to an isolated vasculitis, so one needs to look for things such as Behçet's, polyarteritis nodosa, the ANCA-associated vasculitis condition, or the cryoglobulinemic vasculitis conditions. Other rheumatologic disease needs to be considered. As we recall, systemic lupus can affect the brain, and then I list some other conditions here. Atherosclerosis, of course, can cause strokes and TIAs, as can cerebral emboli. Lymphoma can affect the brain, and then there's a list of other mimics. And again, I'm not going to belabor this. I have included my lecture notes below, and I did include this whole differential in my lecture notes. Perhaps the thing that was the most challenge to me in practice was the presence of reversible cerebral vasoconstriction syndromes, and these can be and are frequently misdiagnosed as central nervous system vasculitis. The onset is different. It's more often middle-aged women, and it presents as a thunderclap headache. So it's not long, indolent course. It's a very sudden onset. There can be severe neurologic defects associated with this. Indeed, the patients can have stroke-like or even stroke syndromes. In working this up, one finds that the lumbar puncture reveals the CSF to be normal, but the angiography can look like vasculitis, and that's what one sees in this picture here, where there is narrowing of the vessel walls of the cerebral circulation, such as one sees in vasculitis. The treatment for that's different than central nervous system vasculitis. Typically, observation is best. When treatment's initiated, usually it's to try to cause blood vessel dilation That's with calcium channel blockers and occasionally corticosteroids. Now, when one encounters something that there is a concern of a systemic or a central nervous system vasculitis, the acute phase reactions should be checked, although those are often normal. As with other diseases, I do check a blood count, chemistries, and urine, again, looking for clues of other systems involved. Serologies include what we do for most vasculitis conditions, including the ANA and dsDNA. That's looking for clues of lupus, the SSA and SSB likewise, and the SMRMP. Again, all clues for a systemic autoimmune disease. I also look for clues of other vasculitis conditions, including the ANCA, the serum complements, cryoglobulins, etc. The central nervous system, the CSF, cerebral spinal fluid should be checked for blood counts, protein, cultures. Again, many infections can look like this. MRI is done, and what we see here is evidence of some sort of edema. A CT scan is done to exclude hemorrhage, and then angiography. This can show areas of dilation and then beating, which are little aneurysms. And lastly, biopsy. Now, I did mention the reversible cerebral vasoconstriction syndrome. It's very important to get a brain and leptomeningeal biopsy in order to make sure that there is indeed vasculitis going on and one is not dealing with that syndrome. Unfortunately, in my practice, I have found it very difficult to get a neurosurgeon to do the biopsy for me. And perhaps vasculitis syndrome centers such as Cleveland Clinic has more success in getting their neurosurgeons to do the biopsy, but I have not been able to do that. And unfortunately, I believe that some of patients were treated that had the reversible vasoconstriction syndrome were treated as a vasculitis. What this biopsy shows, this one does show sort of a dense mononuclear perivascular or lymphocytic infiltrate consistent with a vasculitis, and this picture even shows the appearance of what looks like a granuloma. The treatment for central nervous system vasculitis is typically high-dose corticosteroids, usually with cyclophosphamide. Now, I mentioned other treatments, mycophenolate mofetil and rituximab, but most often cyclophosphamide is used. There's the most data to support that. As one could imagine, it is hard finding studies about the treatment of this condition as it is very rare, so there's not any really good placebo-controlled studies, and we rely primarily on series of patient studies. Again, in dealing with this condition, when one thinks one has a primary central nervous system vasculitis, it's very important to rule out many other causes and beware of the reversible cerebral vasoconstriction syndromes. Thank you for coming to my lecture today about cerebral angiitis or central nervous system angiitis. The next discussion will be about a variable vessel vasculitis called Behçet's.